Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to the channel. Did Mark Richt and Manny Diaz make the University of Miami soft? Now, I'm not going to be concerning myself with, what may have transpired under Randy Shannon or what transpired under Coach Al Golden. I'm only going to be focused on things that transpired under Coach Richt and Coach Diaz, because weirdly enough, there's still players on this team who play under Coach Mark Richt. And maybe some of the things that they experienced under Coach Richt from a, maybe as people say, a laid back, what do they call it? The, whatever that club fed, whatever it is. That mindset may still be in those particular players. Now, this is what I have to say about that, right? Because I see some people have been somewhat being disrespectful to Coach Richt and talking about the style in which he coaches. But man, listen, man. Mark Richt was a very, very successful coach. He didn't win a national championship, but at the same time, you don't average 9.5 to 10 wins per year and be bad and think that your system or the way that you want to conduct things at your program is poor or bad. I'm not buying it. I'm not subscribing to that, right? So, because again, Coach Richt came in first 2 years, won 19 games. Mark Richt was here when we had probably the christening of Hard Rock Stadium. When we saw Hard Rock Stadium at its full capacity, when a Notre Dame team came down, where many media pundits felt like, is Miami for real? And nothing about that game, from offense or defense, signified that our players are soft. Nothing about it. Now, we can say that, well, Shy, those weren't Mark Richt's players, those were Al Golden's players. Okay, sure, we can say that. But we also can say that, at least from a defensive side of the ball, those particular players played better under Manny Diaz than they did under Coach Mark D'Onofrio. And we could also look at it from a standpoint similar to how we're looking at our offense this year, where those particular guys under Mark D'Onofrio probably weren't playing as hard as they could play and trying to be adaptive to the system, whereas it was complete and full buy-in from day one under Coach Diaz as well as Coach Richt. So nothing about 2017 against Notre Dame indicated that it's any softness in this entire program, point blank period, right? Now, obviously, 2018 came and some holes started appearing in the ship. We didn't find out until the conclusion of the season that Coach Richt had been dealing with some health issues. Also, I'm sure when Coach Richt was hired initially, Coach Richt was probably burnt out. And so he pushed us through the last, 2 years before it went out. So, and for people to say Coach Richt is soft, I was listening to Streeter, and they were talking about they had Malik as well as Brevin Jordan on a Twitter space and said that when Mark Richt got here, Mark Richt told Malik Rozier, you might as well transfer. So a soft coach don't say that, right? This image that we have of Coach Richt, where, well, I'm not saying he's faking it, but Mark Richt, you're not successful without a little dog in you. A little dog in you. You're not successful without a little get up and go, no nonsense type of approach to guys. You don't win 9.5 games, average 10 games a year. They'll sniff that out of you real quick. That'll falter. If that was who Mark Richt really was, Mark Richt wouldn't have made it all the way up to 2016. There's no way in the world he would have. Mark Richt got hired in 2000. Mark Richt was on that job for 16 years. If Mark Richt was faking it, Mark Richt would have never made it 16 years at the University of Georgia. And that's just real, right? So, Manny Diaz takes over. And I don't like taking up for Coach Diaz. I really don't. But again, one of the things that I think is good about being a fan is that sometimes, in the heat of the moment, we overreact, right? We're not thinking logically. And so once someone's gone, we can kind of maybe look back and say, okay, well, these were some of the issues that said coach had. Well, obviously, the first issue that Coach Diaz had was he's a first-time head coach. Obviously, he has never run a program before. Obviously. And now kind of looking back on it, now that the dust has settled, I think one of the issues, the biggest issue was Coach Diaz, was the fact that Coach Diaz may have tried to change who he was. Because I did a video, it's on my other page, and I need to upload it over here on this particular page. But y'all remember, a lot of y'all was saying that Manny Diaz is a disciplinarian. Manny Diaz is this. Manny Diaz is not letting them boys up. Manny Diaz is forcing these guys to do better. That's what y'all said. Right? And so Coach Diaz gets the head coaching job. And I think, looking back on it now, I think he changed. I think he went from the guy that he was on the defensive side of the ball, and he tried to be more Mark Richt. He may have tried to be more Mac Brown, more Dan Mullen, in the sense of trying to be that guy that's a player's coach. But the issue with that is, to me, is when you give an inch, they're going to try to take a mile. And I think that's what happened. I think they took a mile. Now, again, I'm not again, shooting Manny Diaz any bill, because I still think he was prideful. I think he was still ego-driven. I think, he talked too much. Right? We will still remember the clip where it's like, if you don't come to Miami, you can get your butt whooped by him. I still remember that. I still remember the arrogance last year, coming to Florida State, not even riding the team bus, pulling up in the limousine. I still remember that. Trying to bring some of that bravado, some of that swag that Miami had. But again, that swag was established on the field first. And then all the extra stuff. Miami was kicking butt on the field way before they put the fatigues on. So imagine if that would have happened in reverse. Imagine if Miami players would have put the fatigues on first before they put in work on the field. That would have looked foolish. But pride, ego, right? We still remember that. We lost that game. Coming in too arrogant. Too arrogant. So, going back to Coach Mark Richt. I remember after 2013, Coach Mark Richt hired Jeremy Pruitt to come be the defensive coordinator for the University of Georgia. And immediately clashing of heads. Because Jeremy Pruitt is used to doing things the Saban way, the Jimbo way. Mark Richt don't operate in that manner. He didn't do it. And so it almost seemed like that at one point in time, Jeremy Pruitt was trying to undermine Coach Richt and maybe backdoor and get the head coaching job at the University of Georgia. Right? So we can kind of maybe say karma occurred to him at the University of Tennessee, where they catch you and your staff giving out McDonald's bags full of money. Who knows? But like I said, I think that's what Manny did. He took what Mark Richt did, because again, that's a nice template. It was 18, 16 and 17. But also, Manny Diaz took some shots at Mark Richt as well. Right? He took some shots. A man gave you an opportunity. You took some shots. You bit the hand that fed you. Right? That's another thing I didn't like about him. And so now, not only did you do all of those particular different things, now you have been ridiculed. And now you are the reason that the Miami Hurricanes are soft. And again, like I said, I'm not trying to shoot Coach Diaz any bail here, but I don't think that's just the case. I think what we're seeing right now is a situation, because I know people have been talking about the injuries, and the first thing the Avengers said, oh, it's the intensity in practice now. They cranking it up. We had injuries last year. The practices were soft, remember? So pick a side and stay on that side. Pick a side and stay on it, right? But I just think it's a situation where maybe Coach Cristobal came in, and as some people who know him and say, he's blunt. He's straight to the point. He's not sugarcoating anything. That's how he feels he needs to be to get the job accomplished. And I think that is not always the correct way to do it. Everyone doesn't respond well to being cursed out, fussed at, all of that particular stuff. Everyone is not responsive to that. Some guys, you need to pull them to the side and say, hey, man, what's going on? You missed that block out there. and you can talk to him that way. But if everything is just so angry, I think we get what we see on the field right now. Now, it's still up in the air whether or not Coach Cristobal will make some adjustments. Because I think when we talk about adaptability, we're only talking about, well, man, maybe he needs to modernize his offense. But maybe he needs to modernize his coaching as well. And understand and know his players. I did, because I didn't think it was called for. But people loved it when they saw last year Mario take the headset, throw it on the ground, and fuss at the player for making the boneheaded penalty and all that stuff like that. And I think from a standpoint, maybe that player can respond from that. But we never saw what the interaction was between him and Anthony Brown last year when Anthony Brown was throwing interceptions and keeping games closer than they had to be. Did he fuss at them? So I think maybe similar to Coach Saban when he came back from the Dolphins and went to Alabama, he had to kind of acclimate himself with that. So I will say this. Coach Cristobal knows his play, should know the team by now and should know who in the world he can go at like that. And I think that's what the issue was. I think it was just too much force coming in, and Manny Diaz is catching flack for it and saying that the guys are soft. And like I said, I saw nothing soft in 2017 when we saw the full potential of Hard Rock Stadium. I don't think nothing was soft about that. And just catching the little tidbits and snippets from what Streeter from Canesville spoke about when they had Brevin Jordan and Malik Rozier in that Twitter space, it was like, wasn't nothing soft about this locker room. I mean, we held people accountable, right? Now, whatever happened, it ended up happening, right? But I'm not gonna sit up here and blame Manny Diaz for this. We can blame him for maybe some lack of depth and recruiting misses and all this particular stuff like this. But I'm not gonna say that the team was soft because of that. What I will say is he just didn't know how to balance being the tough guy and being the player coach guy. And anytime where they're not in perfect balance, if they're like this or they like this, it's not gonna work. They have to be like this. It has to be perfect balance. It has to be perfect harmony. And I think that's what's happening with Coach Cristobal right now. It's not in balance. And you got Coach Gaddis, similar to Coach Enos, coming in and just talking like this and throwing players under the bus as if y'all are God's gift to offensive play calling. It doesn't work like that. Just because you did something a certain way at a certain program does not mean that it's going to work here. And I'm tired of hearing fans say that we don't need to stop babying the players and they're soft and all this particular stuff like this. Listen, everyone doesn't respond that way. Everyone doesn't respond to that. And a lot of times, those type of people that think like that, sometimes you can look in their background and you can see that, oh, you got some stuff that happened in your life that you didn't like, but you say that made you who you are today. But what did it destroy? It may have destroyed a relationship with a parent or a guardian or something like that. So stop feeling like that just because Nick Saban does some way and all this stuff like that, like he's the most successful. Nick Saban is not the only coach that has won national championships. He's not. You can be a player coach and get results. Pete Carroll did it. Les Miles did it. Dabo Swinney's doing it. Jim Tressel did it. You can be a player coach and get results. You just have to make sure that's in balance. You got to know that. You have to have it in balance. And that doesn't matter for the player coach or for the disciplinarian. It has to be in balance, because when one is not in balance, you get results like what we get right now. And like I said, we're going into week 10, and I'm not blaming Manny Diaz for what we have seen on the field after the bye week and we went in to play North Carolina. So, as always, like, subscribe, share, and it's always about the you, baby.